Okay, so we've talked a bit about how do you find what's out there, how do you clean it up. Let's talk a little bit about how do we prevent this in the future. The first thing I've got on here are resource groups. If you're an Azure user, you know this term very well. Azure requires use of resource groups. What they are, and they're a little bit different in AWS than Azure, but fundamentally these are logical containers of resources. In Azure, when you deploy a stack or one or many services, you can actually remove them and in their entirety by just removing the resource group. In AWS, they're really tag or CloudFormation stack-based groupings. It works a little differently, but what I definitely recommend is an exploration of resource groups, especially in AWS if you haven't used them. They can provide a shot in the arm or provide value for billing, for just tag management, for resource management, and if you're doing things like tag-based IAM rules, for your RBAC, for your role-based control. So check them out if you haven't used them. They're probably only going to help. All right, the next topic, and this is one that I think everyone has experience and opinions and kind of strong feelings about, are naming and tagging. And for the sake of this chat, names are basically a tag. They're kind of a special tag, but under the hood, they're fundamentally a tag, I believe, across both environments. So I'm going to kind of refer to them. I'm going to refer to names as another tag. I can't advocate strongly enough for the use and the required use of tags. If you have opened a console, the AWS console, the web page or Azure portal, and you're looking at resources, no name, no tags, you know how frustrating it is to go, I have no idea what this thing is for, and you start on some sort of sleuthing and detective work to try and figure out what's going on. Well, the four tags that I think work across every environment I've worked in, and we require are name, which is the name of the resource. And what I'd recommend here is, and I've worked with different customers, we've come up with really complex sort of naming standards and nomenclature. Whatever your standard is, I'd recommend that it has some human readability and value to it. I've worked in environments where it was a GUID, like a long string of text, or a long string with no real value other than being unique. I've worked in environments where it was a bunch of sort of very sort of unclear terms about what these things mean, like a 3 letters hyphen 3 letters hyphen 3 letters, where it had value, but you had to decrypt it basically. Whatever your standard is, just use one and have it have some value so that people that are coming into these environments, because I'm working across multiple accounts. I can't remember one thing from the next. I've had to learn as I got older to write everything down. I want a model that allows me to figure things out quickly and at least let me know where I need to start going to figure out who uses it, who do I need to contact to make sure that we can do things, maintenance and patching or just documentation. The 3 tags that I feel strongly about and we use are some sort of POC tag, basically someone to contact, right? This can be a person, an email, a phone number, the more the better. It can be a distro group. But when I'm looking at a resource, give me someone to contact when I have questions. Project, right? And this, what is this basically supporting? What kind of stack is it? It could be a technology, it could be a project based, it could be a customer. Describe something about what it's doing. And then one that definitely have strong feelings about is some sort of deployment date or some sort of timing date based stamp that's part of the tagging scheme in a format like ANSI. And there's a variety of these that is standard, known, and enforceable, so that I can do tag-based queries and tag-based automation and tag-based scripting. In other words, hey, let's query for all the EC2s that have been out there and deployed more than 2 years, more than 6 months. Let's review those, so enforcement of some sort of date standard, so you can be confident that that people are adhering to it. This has saved me, and this is extremely valuable. Other tags that have helped are a deployment model. So we use Terraform a lot. I put that in there because in some cases when there's a bad deployment, I have to go back in and manually clean things up. So knowing whether it was manually deployed or Terraform deployed or CloudFormation deployed has been helpful. Sometimes tier, for example, is this a prod environment? Is this non-prod? Often, and more lately, that's sort of covered by what account or subscription you're in. But these are the 4 tags, name, including, that I really have strong feelings with. Okay, so this is great. Probably most people are nodding their head. Probably most people have worked through this. The real rub is how do you enforce it? And this is where we're doing some interesting work that we'll probably hopefully have a chance to do a webinar like this on later. But what we've been working on is a deployment CI pipeline, integrated pipeline that any deployments that we have, and these have to be scripted, right? So we're talking about, and we'll talk about them in the next slide, why that's important. But since we are Terraform users, we'll talk, when we write our Terraform deployments, our Terraform scripts, we, prior to deploying them, we run them through a policy checker. There's so HashiCorp, which owns and Terraform is one of their products. They also have a product called Sentinel, which does this. We're not using that. We're using an open source tool, and it's called Open Policy Agent. And what it allows us to do is to write policies, and a policy can be written in any way about anything. So, for example, in this model, we have policies that say if a resource can have tags, it must have these 4 tags. And it's written in, and they have a language called Rego, which is it's just, you know, it's converted to that language. And what we do is we pipe the Terraform script to that, and OPA checks our script. It converts it to JSON. We convert it to JSON. It interprets it, and if it passes, right, then the deployment occurs. In this pipeline, we also are integrated with Fugue, so that we use Fugue sort of post-deployment for drift detection, compliance, and all the things it's really good at. But this is and having been in this space and struggled with, it's great that we have a tagging scheme, but how do you enforce it? This is something I'm really excited about. So, hey, Josh, I just want to kind of pause here, and I know, and actually I should say, we learned about OPA through our work with Fugue, but you guys, or you as in Fugue, you guys use OPA. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about it?
Sure thing, thanks. So Fugue has a long history of innovation in policy as code. We actually have some pretty fundamental patents on policy as code. And one of the things, so we've been working in this area for years, but one of the things we're really excited about with OPA, Open Policy Agent, is it has now been adopted by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, who are the folks who maintain Kubernetes. And the beautiful thing about this is prior to OPA, there really wasn't any high quality open way to write policy as code. You had to learn a proprietary language like in Sentinel, or a derivative of SQL like in some of the other, a proprietary derivative of SQL. So we love OPA because it's one way to write policies, and it's going to work not just across things like source code, but Fugue, I believe we run more OPA policy checks probably than anyone else on a daily basis. We run the policies in Fugue are built using OPA, and we're big contributors to the OPA open source project. We probably are in the tens of millions a day of these OPA checks against policies for all of our great customers. So if you haven't looked at OPA, I think it would be very much worth your while to take a look at that project. And I believe I'm going to be doing a presentation at KubeCon about it as well. But Dave, I also want to comment that I'm seeing a theme here. Well, 2 themes. One is the title of the slide, right? Preventing. If you think back to the beginning, as I was describing how bad guys are doing these attacks now, the automated scanning aspect, the 7 minutes, boy, should prevention be your intention going forward. So cleaning up your orphans, looking backward, and preventing them going forward, because the risk is just so great. But the other theme I see through this is a lot of these suggestions are there to make it easy for the good guys to understand what's going on. And I think that there's a real kind of message of hope there, which is that if you just do some simple things as you build, understanding what you've built, going forward becomes much easier, and to make that very human readable, to make it very discoverable for the customer.
Yeah, I kind of made that comment. I've learned a few years ago. My memory is not what it used to be, and I have to write things down. It's this similar thought here, right? So we have, you're working across these different environments. I mean, AWS and Azure, other environments, across customers and different tiers. There's so much going on. There's a real value in doing preventative work or preventative measures so that you can quickly kind of come up to speed on what is this, who's using it, what's its value, anything that, and everything we're talking about here, these are all things we use kind of in the trenches to manage environments. So anything that we can do to make our job ultimately faster, safer, cost our customers less, cost us less, less stress on us. These are things that we found to be valuable in managing environments. So yeah, it's what is an ounce of prevention is a pound of something. It's a little bit of upfront work. Will definitely help you in the end.